State Senate, District 12. And so I just want to give appreciation to him for paying for the food for the breakfast that we've had here. If you didn't get it for the breakfast, sorry. I think those of us who've tasted it, it's pretty good stuff. But maybe some leftovers, who knows? Anyway, we're glad you're here. And we're going to move right ahead to introduce Mr. wherever he is, and there he comes. And I wanted to say a special thank you to Mr. Anthony Verdugo, because this man has fought day and night for us to win the two big victories that we won this year. Anthony's been in the Capitol probably more times than he's been home this year. Probably spent more time up there. And he has been fighting and has called pastors together to fight to protect us, as well as to stop the inroads of the demons from Sodom and Gomorrah that are trying to take over our nation and destroy Christianity. And so a big thank you goes to him. But also I want to notice that we got two pastors here that drove all the way from Miami to come to this conference today. And I made several trips to Tallahassee myself while we were in committee meetings trying to stop the bills in committee. And I wanted to say also a special appreciation to my Hispanic brothers and black brothers and sisters. Well, if there's any Hispanic sisters, we'll include those too. And black brothers and sisters, because we saw a tremendous turnout, sometimes all the way from Miami, of black pastors and Hispanic pastors going all the way to Tallahassee to fight for our religious freedoms. Thank you for your good representation today. Thank you for the battles that have been fought. And we won. Two battles. The war is still going on. And also we appreciate each one who's had a part in trying to help us win these battles. We're going to hear more about them. So I think Mr. Anthony Verdugo is about ready to make the grand entrance. And we'll turn it over to him. Let's give him a good hand as he comes. You want to go up? Bless you.
Can the video catch us here at this level?
Yes.
Yeah, fine. Perfect. Okay. Good morning, everyone. How are you? I hope you had a great breakfast. I want to officially welcome you to the 2016 Marion County Pastors Protection Conference. And this is actually the second year that we're here. We're here in 2015, about 12 months ago, right here at this church. And I got to tell you, every time that we need to come up to Marion County, we know that we can count on Pastor Gerald Buston. We just pick up the phone, give him a call, let him know what's happening, what we want to do, and he makes it possible. And you may not realize there's a lot of hard work behind the scenes in putting all this together, especially on Monday morning after you've had, your weekend of services. And pastors, you know what that's like. Some of you prepare over the weekend, and you have to take your time to delineate the message that you're going to share with your flock and your congregation. And then on top of that, you get a call from me saying, I need to be in your church Monday morning. Okay? Not an easy thing, but he's a real trooper, and he's come through every single time. So the Christian Family Coalition wants to thank him with a special appreciation award for hosting the 2016 Marion County Pastor Protection Conference. Pastor, if you'll come up. Very well. We appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how truly aware you are of the crisis that this nation is facing. It is severe. It is worse than most of us even realize and can even imagine and think. Last year, and that's why we started doing these conferences statewide. Last year, and I think many of you were here, we hosted the Marriage Protection Conference. How many were here for that? Show of hands. Okay. All right. So we got a lot of new people. That's great. The Marriage Protection Conference served one purpose, and that was to make sure that churches were aware that a decision had come down from the Supreme Court that left them legally vulnerable. That decision was over Gefeldt-Hodges, which is the marriage decision. And what that decision said was that there was a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. However, it did not talk about the rights of the church or clergy. They remained silent. The court remained silent on that. So obviously, the concern was that opens the door to forcing churches, pastors, ministries, religious schools to violate their conscience. Now, that's already happened. So last year, we went to 9 different counties in a time span of about 7 months, and we trained over 1,000 Florida pastors on how to legally protect themselves from same-sex marriage. Okay? And that was important at that time, because if you were sued or legally challenged, you needed to show something in court before a judge to say, hey, this is what we believe. Now, as odd as that might sound, I'm going to share cases with you today. You are going to hear information you have not heard anywhere else, and it's documented. All of it, actually, most of it is in your packets, and we're going to review that so that you can understand how and why the enemy is now encroaching on and moving inside the church. And it's coming from the government. Not only from the federal government, but also from the state government, and in some cases even local government. By the way, I know this is very important. Let me just make a pause here. The bathrooms are in the back. I think to my right is the men's room, and to the left is the ladies' room. So, unlike other places, men use men's room here, and ladies use ladies' room, okay? No men and women's bathrooms is what I'm trying to say. You may have heard something about that recently, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we are unashamedly pro-life, pro-family, pro-marriage, pro-religiously. Because our nation is under assault, and we don't believe it's politics that's going to solve it. It's going to be the gospel of Jesus Christ. However, for that to happen, it is his people that must be engaged. We cannot leave it to anyone else. We can't leave it to the Republican Party. We can't leave it to the Democratic Party. Okay? It is up to us to take up and pick up the mantle, if you will, so that we can make sure that our light shines in government. And I'm going to give you some examples. Of what we are facing right now. In 2007, and this case I think went through 2012, the case of Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association. Okay, I'm going to lay the background for you so you understand why we need the Pastor Protection Act in Florida. How many have heard about the Florida Pastor Protection Act? Raise your hand. Okay, a few, maybe half of you haven't heard about it. We're going to tell you what that law does and doesn't do, and that's why our attorney is here today. We're going to review it. We're going to go over it very, very specifically, and you're going to understand. But I will tell you right now that there is a reason, a precursor to this, and that started in the case of New Jersey. I believe if you look at your packet, it's on page 11, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, 18. Mine is 18. Yours might be 17 or 19. Mine is page 18. Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association. Look that up for a second. Okay, everybody got their page? Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association. Okay, New Jersey. The crown jewel of the Eastern Seaboard. It's a retreat. It's wholly owned and operated by the Methodist Church. They bought it right after the Civil War in 1865. And they even got a charter from the state of New Jersey that declared it to be a place for the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Okay? So this is a religious corporation. This is a religious organization, no doubt about it. No argument, no disputing that. In 2007, the state legislature decided to legalize same-sex civil unions. This is prior to marriage. Same-sex civil unions. The folks, same-sex couples, immediately began to pursue Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association Because not only do they have Bible studies, not only do they have worship services, they also host wedding receptions and weddings. So these same-sex couples began to apply for their receptions and their weddings at Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association. So what did Ocean Grove say? It said, we're a religious corporation, and it violates our conscience and our faith, much like this church would, much like I suspect every single church here represented would say. Am I correct? All right. Y'all had breakfast this morning, right? Yeah. All right. So here's what proceeded to happen. When they said no, they had discrimination complaints filed against them.
Did you send?
And what the same-sex couples said was that they were being excluded just like African Americans at one time were being excluded. That they were just like African Americans and Hispanics. Well, I don't know about you, but that is the most offensive thing I've ever heard in my life. Because we're talking about behavior versus a true identity. You know, we're not animals, okay? We choose our behavior as human beings, all right? We don't choose the family we're born into, the ethnic group we're born into. And the Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association decided to hire some attorneys, and they filed a countersuit saying that they were protected by the First Amendment. Now keep this in mind because this is very important. The First Amendment was used as a legal defense so that they would not have to perform these same-sex weddings. Here's the problem with that. It was dismissed in court. Their case was summarily dismissed. They were found guilty of discrimination. They were fined, and they had to stop doing any weddings and receptions. Now, what did the judge declare? The judge declared that Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association was a place of public accommodation. Anybody know what a place of public accommodation is? Well, for one, a bathroom is a place of public accommodation. A restaurant. So the judge decreed that a church was no better than a bathroom or a restaurant or a movie house. And that's why they were found guilty of discrimination. Had to pay a fine, and the Methodist churches decided to stop doing any receptions. This is serious. It was a 5-year case. And the reason I ask you to keep note mentally of what I'm saying about the First Amendment is because it's going to come up in a few minutes when I talk about what happened in Tallahassee. So that was the case of Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association. Now, the state of New Jersey does not have a Pastor Protection Act. They don't. And so they had no legal protection. They thought they had the First Amendment. They didn't. I want to emphasize that. Because if you think you've got the First Amendment, there's a case out there that says you don't. Okay? Then we have the case of Don and Evelyn Knapp, 2013, and that is in your booklet. I believe it's before page 18. It's on page 12. Page 12. Don and Evelyn Knapp. They own the Hitching Post Wedding Chapel. Okay? They're missionaries. They've had it for 25 years. You know, the prophet Hosea said in the scriptures that my people perish for lack of knowledge. Okay? We don't want the Church of Jesus Christ to perish. That's why we're bringing you the knowledge that you need. We know we win in the end. We know we don't perish. But why needlessly go through what we don't have to go through? Okay? God calls us to be the head and not the tail, at the top and not the bottom of our political process.
That's right.
Okay? So we are to be stewards of our communities that God has placed us in. The Hitching Post, 2013, just a couple of years ago. A federal judge struck down, they live in Idaho, they live specifically in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. A federal judge struck down that state's constitutional amendment respecting marriage as a union of one man and one woman. Okay, it was struck down. So immediately following that, they, Don and Evelyn Knapp, after having served 25 years in this community, received a call from 2 men who wanted to marry in the chapel. And they were declined. The request for the marriage was declined for the ceremony. And they received a few days later a threatening letter, Don and Evelyn Knapp, from the city attorney and the city attorney told them that they were in violation of the law, and that they had to either perform the ceremony or they could face 180 days in jail. Listen to me, 180 days in jail. Their attorneys are ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom. These are the folks that provided this material. Okay, they are still in federal court defending themselves today, as we speak, 3 years later. Okay, and they would be fined I think it's $1,000 a day for every day that you're in violation. This is serious stuff. Now, the state of Idaho does not have a pastor protection act. Okay, I'm going to go forward to another case, which is on the right side of your handbook, and that's the case of the Knights of Columbus Council in Madison, Indiana. Okay, it's a photocopy that we made here. I know a couple of folks need some packets. We're going to get you some. Okay. Knights of Columbus Council. The headline reads, "Will allow lesbian couples wedding reception." What happened here was, and this is 2015, January 2015, December 14th, January 15th, so now we're inching closer to the present day. Two lesbians went to the Knights of Columbus Hall and asked to use one of the locations for their wedding reception. They were turned down. They had so much pressure put on them through social media, through local newspapers, through phone calls, threats of boycotts, threats, you name it, that they relented. And not only allowed them to use the hall, they waived the fee as a form of apology to add insult to injury. Okay? And they got it scot-free. Indiana does not have a pastor protection act. The reason I share all these examples with you is for two. Number one, because the persecution is real and it's here. That's number one. And we had better wake up, get off the sidelines, and begin to take our place as the heads of this society. Okay? Before it's too late. That is our job. That is our role. You say, you're trying to preach politics. No, I'm not preaching politics. I'm preaching morality. I'm preaching scriptural truth. I'm not talking about a tax hike. I'm talking about the government getting involved in the church instead of the church getting involved with the government. Amen. We are to be salt and light. We are to be the oasis in the desert. Proverbs says that righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Amen. So, folks, there's no getting around it. And that case set another dangerous precedent. Now let me tell you, now that you know all of this, why it was important for us to do what we did in Tallahassee. I'll take you back to August of last year. After we, more or less around the time we finished our conferences, we went to the state capitol, met with legislators, and filed the Pastor Protection Act in both the House and the Senate. And I got to tell you, we received phone calls from people, even on our side, who said, leadership doesn't want this. This is too sensitive. This is too delicate. You'll never get it through. It's too controversial. They're afraid of any of the gay stuff. Okay? So they're not going to do anything with it. Well, I don't know about you, but when someone says that to me, I just get more motivated to prove them wrong. Because you know why? As long as you have God's endorsement, that's a majority. That's a majority. And so we proceed with what I would call mission impossible, as we're told. And we had 5 hearings. There were 5 committees that were assigned. And the way it works is when we file a bill in Tallahassee, you go through all these committee hearings, and you've got to testify, and you've got to get the support of all those committee members. If you don't, your bill dies. Which is why Pastor was talking about the fact that I was, the first 3 months of this year, I was there more than I was in my own home. Because every time there was a hearing, we had to be there. But even before the hearing, we had to be with the committee members. We had to tell them what this was about. There was a lot of misinformation out there. And I got to tell you, the first time that we were there, we had about 36 people showed up to speak out against the bill. Those who call themselves pastors in a few cases. They would wear these collars, these clerical collars. And they'd say they were mainstream, Presbyterian, Lutheran, you name it. I don't want to cast any aspersions on the denomination. I'm just telling you the claims that were made. I don't know about you, but I've learned, through government that you can't believe everything you hear or you see, right? And these folks had the audacity to show up and to actually claim that they were men and women of God and that they did not want and they did not need this legislation. And so what was our answer? Well, you may not want to need it, we want it, we need it, and we're going to use it. Okay? We're going to use it. So we went through that first committee, and every single time that we had a committee hearing, I would call Pastor Buston. It was because we came here last year to this church, and because we went to 9 or 8 other counties, that we had built an infrastructure, a network of churches that we were able to bring together, and pastors that we were able to call on the phone and say, we need you here. We need you up in Tallahassee. We need you to testify. We need to speak up and speak out for this legislation. Because every time we had a hearing, we knew there would be about 20 or 30 people who were there. Now, ladies, you'll be interested in hearing this. The president of the National Organization for Women of Florida was there at every hearing, speaking out on behalf of the women of Florida, saying that the women of Florida oppose the Passenger Protection Act. This is what you get when you're not engaged. Other people falsely, I would say, speaking out for you. Okay? Now, National Organization for Women, Planned Parenthood, they're the largest abortion providers in this nation. They traffic. Right now they're under a federal investigation for trafficking in baby body parts. You may have heard about that. And these folks were out there lobbying and speaking out against the Passenger Protection Act. Then you have the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. There's nothing civil about these folks. And they certainly don't support liberties, except for everybody else, the Christians, of course. And we had a group called Equality Florida, which is an extremist homosexual group in the state. And they all came out against it and testified and had their folks testify. So every single time that happened, we had to have at least 20, 25, 30 folks coming out to speak in support of our bill, of our legislation. Because you know what? They count heads. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, they count heads. And they want to be with the majority. Okay? They don't want to be with the minority, they want to be with the majority. And so every single time we had to do that. In some instances, we even prepared the scripts for them, for everyone, so they could read from the script that we had prepared for them on the law, on the bill. We had a legislator from Broward County. His name is, I believe, Sherman Williams, Democrat, who stood up on the House floor. He had heard some of the testimony from pastors, and he said that pastors should be ashamed of themselves. Well, hold on. Hold on to that amen for a minute. He stood up on the House floor and said that pastors should be ashamed of themselves because he heard some of the testimony. And that some of the testimony from pastors was hate speech. He voted against the Passenger Protection Act. He voted no. He says he's a Christian, and then he turns around and votes no. Well, why would pastors engage in hate speech? According to him, pastors who got up and testified that God made Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve is hate speech. Really? Since when? Since when is the Bible hate speech? That's what the Bible says. The Bible says God created Adam and Eve. Okay? We added the second part. But that's okay too. But that is what the enemy tries to do. They try to censor, they try to manipulate, they try to intimidate. Every single time we see that, what we want to do is we want to speak out more and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat the truth of Jesus Christ in our nation. Because that is what makes a difference. We had him called out from the House floor and we reprimanded him. Immediately, we went down there, we had him called out from the House floor. He says, "You're calling me for this?" I said, "Yeah, we're calling you for this." Because you know what? If you don't call them out, if you don't reprimand them, they'll do it again. It gives them a license to do it again. All of us have raised children. If you let them get away with bad behavior one time, they're going to do it again. So we went through this process, step by step. It took 7 months. from August through March 10th. About August 15th when we filed the bill through March 10th. And, March 10th I had the honor of being with Governor Rick Scott. And that was a very significant day because that was the day that Governor Rick Scott actually formally signed the Passenger Protection Act. Okay? And is now law in Florida. Okay? Round of applause for the Lord. Right? Come on, we need better than that. We need more breakfast. We got it passed. What North Carolina hasn't been able to do, what Georgia hasn't been able to do, we did it in Florida. And we need to be grateful for that. We need to be grateful. An attitude of gratitude. An attitude of gratitude. Now, as all of this was going on, as if it were not enough, then we had the issue of the bathrooms. How many of you have heard about the issue of the bathrooms? Raise your hand. All of you, right? Well, what is this deal with the bathrooms? And why does it affect you? I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tie this all in. You've heard these cases already. Indiana. When they said in Tallahassee, they've got the First Amendment. Churches, those who testify against it, they have the first. I said, no, they don't. Where? Not in New Jersey. We have a case where it was dismissed. At one point, we had a Senate Judiciary Committee bring me up along with the executive director from the homosexual group, and they peppered us with questions. They actually questioned us, peppered us with, why do we need this? You need this because if New Jersey would have had this law, Ocean Grove Camping Association would not have been found guilty of discrimination. You need this because the Knights of Columbus and Indiana would have had protection. You need this because Don and Evelyn and that would not be fighting in federal court right now for their very lives and rights. That's why we need this. Because you're going to hear the details of the bill. Do you have the copies? We do? Yes. Okay. After, when you come up. You're going to have copies of the bill. And our attorney's going to go step by step through this. And you're going to see what kind of protections you have. We need to make sure that you're legally structured to qualify for these protections. This is important too. So when we went there, we had the bathroom bill heard. The chairman, I got to tell you, after we passed it through the first committee, the chairman of the Senate committee was sitting on it for months and wouldn't hear it. So what did we do? We went out to one of his meetings in Tallahassee, and I had our lobbyist, Nathaniel Wolcott, show up. I instructed him to show up with a posse, ladies and gentlemen, with a team. Yes, about 10 folks. And I said, this is what you're going to do. He says, yeah, but we're not on the agenda. I said, that's okay. When you leave there, you're going to be on the agenda. And we went there. They went to see him afterwards. And since there were 10 folks, I thought big burly guys like this, weightlifters. And they surrounded the chairman. And they very gently put their hand, no violence here, we don't preach violence, put their hand on his shoulder, said, Senator, when are you going to hear the Passenger Protection Act? You've been sitting on it since August. This is January, when the session started. You've been sitting on it since August, which was September, October, November, December, 5 months. When are you going to hear it? He said, the next meeting. That's all it took. That's all it took. Intimidation? I'll leave that up to you. Did it work? Definitely worked. You can't argue with success, folks. We know these politicians. I've been a lobbyist over 10 years in Tallahassee. So we know how they think and how they operate. But then what did he do? He put the bathroom bill on at the same meeting. That was a wild ride. We had Christians on one side, we had homosexuals and transsexuals on the other side. If that is not spiritual warfare, as Ephesians says, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. And we had to lobby forcefully and speak out against this bill. But I got to tell you, at one point, we hear this about transgender rights and transgenders, and I think, was it yesterday, the newspaper here had on the headlines, Transgender Lives, the Ocala, the local newspaper, that's what I understand, had on the front line, on the front page, a story about all the quote-unquote transgenders that live here. Do you know what the American Psychological Association says your sexual identity is? It claims, the American Psychological Association, this is not CFC, that your gender identity is your psychological identification. That's it. Of being male, female, something other, or something in between. So now we had a testimony last year from a lady at a Gainesville church where she says a man walked into the ladies' room at the Gainesville church. Okay? Now Gainesville has a local transgender ordinance, so she couldn't do anything about it. And not only that, when questioned by senators, the homosexual groups were asked point blank if a man wants to use the ladies' locker room at a gym, can he? If a biological male wants to use it, can he? And then the guy thinks he's cute. He says, well, Senator, it depends on what you mean by biological male. So everybody's like looking at each other in the hearing room. The guy says, he's got male parts. Do I have to get graphic about it? And then he says, yes, he would be able to use it under this proposal. He admitted it publicly. He was forced into a corner to admit publicly. Do you realize there are 53 different gender identities? Facebook has them. There's male, female, female, male. There's pansexual. There's cisgender. And there's, this is my favorite one, two-spirit. Well, I gotta say, I think you've got more than two spirits in there. I think you've got, I would call that one legion. When you? I would call that one legion. So that is the lunacy and the chaos that we're dealing with. People think, and I share this with you so that you understand, people think, oh no, Pastor, you see, these transgenders, they need, we're Christians, we have to be compassionate, they need their rights. And that means, they've had this operation, they're dressed like, no. Me, as you, look at me, okay? I'm a male. I can walk into, under these laws, I can walk into any public shower, take my clothes off, and actually shower with a woman next to me. Okay? And if someone tries to stop me, I say, no. You see, I'm a female trapped inside a man's body. Oh, that's different. Okay. What is that? It's outrageous. No, I'm not an attorney, but nowhere in the law does self-identification apply. You can't go before a court of law and I can't go and say I'm African American or Asian American or Native American or Asian American. So, but that's my racial identity. No, that doesn't work that way. Much less with sex. Okay? And by the way, it's not gender, it's sex. Your birth certificate says sex. And it's binary. So now you know what? Binary meaning only two options, male or female. So now if you believe that, you're a bigot. You're a racist. You're a homophobe. Or the latest, you're a transphobe. What is a transphobe? This is the stuff that they make up to intimidate, and then people get scared. I don't want to be called names. You know what? For me, that's a badge of honor. Call me every name in the book that you want. Every name in the book that you want. As long as you realize that I'm a child of God. That's the name that I want to be known as. A child of God. So, when these laws are applied, when they're approved and applied, I want you to understand this. And you can go back to an example in New Jersey and in Idaho. Not only did they not have the Passenger Protection Act, in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, the city where Don and Evelyn Knapp have their chapel, they have a sexual orientation and gender identity ordinance. The state of New Jersey, the legislature passed a sexual orientation and gender identity ordinance. Well, isn't that supposed to prohibit discrimination against homosexuals and transsexuals? And aren't we against discrimination because we're the Church of Christ? Well, here's the problem. These laws are being used not as a shield, but as a sword against the church. Not only with the bathrooms, that's one issue, but also with the sexual orientation part. Well, what's your sexual orientation? Well, your sexual orientation is whatever you say it is. There are 37 different sexual orientations, and they apply it to the church. How? In New Jersey, the judge ruled that the Methodist Church was a place of public accommodation. Like I said, no better than a bathroom. But that they were in violation of the state's gay rights law, sexual orientation law, because they wouldn't let two men have their quote-unquote wedding reception in the same place where there are church services and Bible studies. because they denied two men or two women their wedding ceremony or reception. Okay? Because of that sexual orientation law that was used against them. The same thing happened in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. They have a gay rights law, sexual orientation law. That was used against the NAPs to say that they were in violation of sexual orientation law. They were discriminating because they wouldn't marry two men. Okay, what about their rights? What about our rights? Kim Davis, Kentucky. How many remember that? Spent Labor Day weekend in jail. Okay? She has the First Amendment. So well, she's not following the law. Well, the law is the First Amendment. I don't know what law you're talking about. It's the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Then, we've got the bakers in Oregon. Okay? Well, Aaron and Melissa Klein. They wouldn't bake a cake for two lesbians. They were run out of town, practically. The gay rights law was used. So you see, I got to tell you something, and this is controversial, but I'm going to say it. These gay rights laws today, I was so funny because Loretta Lynch, the U.S. Attorney General, recently said that if you don't allow men in women's bathrooms, you're no better than Jim Crow laws. Excuse me? So if a boy or a man wants to shower with a girl or a woman, and you don't let them, then that's Jim Crow. Now, I'll tell you what's Jim Crow. Violating someone's conscience, persecuting Christians, discriminating against them, and not allowing them to live their lives honestly, openly, with dignity.
That's right.
Because we're going to have to give an account one day, not to the United States government, not to this president, but to the Lord.
That's right.
To the Lord. That's who we have to give an account to.
Right.
And that's who we need to fear. So these laws are being used consistently. It was used against the Hugans, and it's here. Photographers in New Mexico kindly declined to take pictures at a wedding. All these laws, they've been found guilty of discrimination. They were fined $7,000. Now, the good news is we stopped that proposal, sexual orientation and transsexual, here in Florida. We stopped it. We defeated it this year. Praise the Lord. It was down in flames. It was flushed down the toilet. All right? But that will come back next year. And I think I was telling our attorney last night over dinner that if that were to pass, by the way, we have some poster boards I want to show you. We can get those poster boards up front, please. I want to show you those poster boards of those two victories. What happens? If that law were ever passed in Florida, the sexual orientation and transsexual law, it would set up a conflict with the Passenger Protection Act. It would immediately set up a legal, trust me, I know what I'm telling you. 20 years of studying this. It would set up a legal conflict between the two laws. And you get yourself some crazy judge, okay, who you don't know what he's on, and he'll say, oh, it's discrimination. The Passenger Protection Act is unconstitutional. It's Jim Crow. I can write it. You want me to write the thing? I can write the thing before it happens. Because that's how corrupt our judicial system is. This is why we must stop passage of this law. And we must expand on the Passenger Protection Act to give more rights to our Christian community. If they don't want to allow the First Amendment to apply, you know what? We've got to do it. Here it is. Okay? This is our victory. And this is our second victory. This is signing the bill. It's a live victory. And it's important to understand, and I said it in passing, I want to say it again. Governor Nathan Deal of Georgia, which is a state right north of us, recently vetoed the Passenger Protection Act in Georgia. Did you know that? He vetoed it. Because corporations like Disney got involved. So we're going to boycott it. We're not filming your state. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. You know, I was faced with a similar situation. I've never been an elected official, but in Miami-Dade County, which is where I'm from, my home county, there was no prayer at county commission meetings for 8 years. There was no prayer. We started a campaign for 16 months it took us, and we got prayer restored before every county commission meeting in Miami-Dade County. Okay? The largest county in the nation to take away and restore prayer. But when that happened, I was on a TV show with Howard Simon, who's the executive director of the ACLU of Florida, and he said, well, I'm going to sue. And I turned to him and I said, go ahead and sue me. Go ahead and sue me, sue the organization, and sue the county. Go ahead and do it. We welcome your lawsuit. Do it. We welcome your lawsuit. Now, why would I say something like that? Because remember, I said it took 16 months, which means that we had crafted an ordinance that had already been upheld by the federal courts as constitutional. It's all how you craft these laws. So they had been sued on it. We had won already. It would have been upheld, and no one had struck down our law anywhere in the country. In fact, it had been upheld as constitutional. So that's why I said, go ahead and sue. So you got to stand up to these bullies. You got to stand up to these bullies because they're all talk. You know, if they want to act, we'll be ready. But you can't cower in fear. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a sound mind.
Amen.
And courage. And guess what happened? He never sued. I'm still waiting. It's been 4 years. You know, when are you going to sue? They moved on to other issues. This is how you confront the enemy. And this is what happened to Governor Nathan Deal in Georgia. They said, oh, we're not going to have a Super Bowl. We're not going to film there. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't come to it. In fact, we don't want you in our state. We don't want you in our state. You know, we don't need you in our state. Recently, the federal Justice Department, the Obama administration, said, well, if you don't allow boys to take showers with girls, we're going to pull your federal funding. Pull it. Pull your federal funding. That's what Texas said. That's what North Carolina said. That's what Utah said. That's what Mississippi said. Times are tough. But the Church of Jesus Christ is rising up, and that is the good news. That is the good news. We are rising up. So I'm going to ask you to do one more thing, and I'm going to show one final example, and then I'm going to ask you to do one thing before we have our attorney come in. This is a case from the federal government. IRS sued for refusing to release secret church investigation procedures. Okay, this is from the Washington Times. A couple of years ago, the IRS reached a secret agreement with atheist groups who said that churches were getting too politically involved. And so they started, IRS, Internal Revenue Service, started these secret investigations. This is not Russia. This is the United States of America. And we were founded on Judeo-Christian values. Okay? And they will not release, not only the list of any churches, they will not release what triggers an investigation. So you don't know. There's a lawsuit now to get the records open, Freedom of Information Act, which has been ignored by this government, so we had to go to court. We're supporting this lawsuit wholeheartedly. But I'm just sharing with you, local, state, federal level, it doesn't matter. There is an onslaught.
That's right.
There is an onslaught. And so I'm going to ask you to do something now. I'm going to ask you to take out on the right side of your packet, there is a sheet, a donation sheet. And I'm going to ask you to take a few minutes now and fill this out. And fill this out before we have our attorney come up. Folks, we want to make sure that every single church, every single Christian, every single pastor in the state of Florida is protected. So we're starting the Christian Protection Fund and the Pastor Protection Fund. And the purpose is to fight for you and to fight for your rights. You know, when we were in Tallahassee, a state senator, Arthenia Joyner, said that she was going to sue in court to have the Pastor Protection Act ruled unconstitutional. I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of getting blindsided here. You know, we got to go on offense and we got to be proactive. We have a vision, but now we need provision for that vision. So I'm going to ask you now to take out your pens, and if you need a pen, let us know and we'll get you some because we have some. Take out the sheet. And many of you became supporters last year. We ask you to renew this year. And if you haven't, we ask you to renew to join us for the first time. If you believe we're making a difference, if you believe that these victories are important, if you believe we have to keep going and moving forward and building a firewall of resistance in this state, we need you today to join us in this effort. So I'm going to ask you now to take out your pens, take out your sheets, and fill this out for a few minutes. We have different levels here. And you have different ways. You can do one time or you can do up to 12 months. Whatever it is, we don't get any funding from the government. We don't get any funding from the foundations. We get it from the church and from individuals such as yourselves. So take a few moments now. Please fill this out. Sow a seed in the kingdom. Sow a seed in the restoration of our nation, starting right here in Florida. This state is so pivotal. It's so key to what we're doing that I'm going to ask you now to fill this out. All of us can do something, folks. All of us can do something. We can sow a seed, and whether it's 3, 5, or 1, whatever that level is that you can do it one time and for 12 months. All of us can do something, folks. We have to combine our treasures together. Because you know what? The enemy is doing that. We've got the ACLU, we've got Black Panther, we've got National Organization for Women. And these are Florida groups. This is not Washington. This is right here in our home states. And they're operating everywhere. Right here in Marion County. You know, our supporters helped defeat a transsexual bill at the school board. What is that worth? What is the price of freedom? It doesn't have a price. But you can help us today because we're missionaries in government and we need your support. We need your financial assistance. A lot of times I hear from people, but someone's got to do something. You know, God has blessed us to do it. It's a calling. You know, to Him go all the glory and all the honor. But we need you to fill out the form now. And I'm going to ask the volunteers to come around and start picking up the envelopes for those who are filling it out and those who are done filling it out. We will not stop until we get final victory. Yes.
Actually, I have to leave, but I wanted to share something that you may be covering. Do I apologize?
Mm-hmm.
I know a church in Polk County, a man had went through the whole process of counseling with a couple for marriage. And a pastor friend of mine got a phone call from his parishioner that said, I don't know what to do because my daughter is getting married tomorrow, but she's the groom. And she was counseled the whole time thinking that she was a man.
Right.
But she's actually a woman.
Yes, yes. I was told about that case from in the AG, right? Assembly of God, in Miami. I'm not saying it happened there, but that's who told us. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, there you go, folks. Another thread. So please go ahead and start filling this out now. We're going to give you a few minutes before our attorney comes up, and we're going to ask you to just make the most generous donation that you can. Any level that you can will be greatly appreciated, and it will allow us to continue to do the work that we're doing here in the entire state of Florida. So go ahead and fill that out now while we wait. Thank you. Keep your hand up if you're still filling it out. Let us know. You can do it as an individual or you can do it as a church. It's up to you, however you want to do it. If you want to make a pledge, if you want to talk to us about it, you can do that too, but we're going to ask you to fill it out anyway. Fill it out with all your information. Okay. You got a form right here for you. Anybody else need a form? Anybody else need a form? You need a form, sir? Yes. As an individual, you can join. You can join as an individual. You know, if you're not sure about your church and whatever, you can join as an individual, and then we can talk to you about having your church be involved as well. But you can certainly join as an individual. If you want to fill it out and then talk to me afterwards, you can do that as well. But we do ask everyone to go ahead and fill out that form. You know, during this effort, the first 3 months, and Pastor Busson was there, so he realized that we spent $30,000 just to get the Pastor Protection Act passed. $30,000 in 3 months, the first 3 months of the year. With these conferences, we've been able to make up right now about 2/3 of that. We're still 10,000 shy. So when you support, you're helping contribute to the effort. Someone thought it was 300,000, another one said 30 million. I said, no, 30,000. It's only 30,000. So with the folks in this room today here, I think we can get very close to reaching that goal, Pastor, don't you? You have an envelope, you can put it in, or you can just turn it in the way it is. You can also put on your credit card, MasterCard, Visa, Discover, and all that stuff. Raise your hand, please, if you're ready to have your envelope picked up. Okay, you got a gentleman in the back there, a couple of gentlemen in the back. Keep your hands up so we'll see where you are. And sir, I'm going to get you one before you leave. The gentleman, sure, we'll all get you one before you leave. Does anybody else need to have a form to fill out? That one gentleman. Okay, please keep your hand up so we can make sure we pick it up. You might say, well, I can't do a lot, but I can do this. I can do the first level. I can do the second level. You know what? That brings us that much closer to it. We'll get you another one. We have some, we'll get you. Okay. Keep your hand up so we can pick it up from you, please. It is your support that makes a difference. You know, these victories aren't possible without your financial help. It wouldn't happen. I see some folks are still filling out their cards, so we'll wait for them. Anyone on this side need to have an envelope picked up? On this side to my left. Anybody here need to have an envelope picked up? Okay. What about in the middle? In the center here? Do we have anybody still filling out a form?